Welcome to my session, how to fail a Teams rollout despite successful implementation. That's a topic which came to my mind because everyone is just telling you how to get a rock star, how to be successful. I will do it the same, but I will also give you some insights what can go wrong or what are the points you may miss or underestimate, underrate, and therefore you may have some issues afterwards. So just quick introduction for myself. I'm a CEO and co-founder from a small company doing Microsoft Teams, Skype for Business, 2 Teams migration projects, focusing on voice, on user adoption, on projects to bring a modern workplace, basically, to our customers. I'm also doing some community activities like Teams user group in Germany, adoption and change forum, but also running a podcast, a German-speaking podcast, so which is called Talk Microsoft 365. Okay. The first question is how to fail a Microsoft Teams rollout. And that's pretty easy to answer. You get the wrong or not the right people from the administrative perspective involved. You can say it with know-how or knowledge, but it's also sometimes the resistance of existing admins who work with on-premises infrastructures and they refuse to work with cloud products. You can underestimate the resources you need, and that's not only for the technical perspective, that's the first thing you may think about, but the other one is also from the training perspective, from the persons who will be involved in the whole project. So resources is not just about CPU, network bandwidth, but also for the other stuff I will tell you or I will show you in a couple of minutes. And you underestimate the time you will need for the whole project. And once again, this is something you may already know from different IT projects, or you may have experience from other IT projects. Usually it takes way longer to implement the IT configuration, setup. Also the whole technical part maybe takes a bit longer as expected because you have some issues. There's a new firmware which has some bugs or whatever. That's one point that can delay the actual rollout plan. But also the acceptance of the users can affect your timeline and your rollout plan. That's also an underestimated topic like resources, but from the end user perspective. So also think about the time you need to train the users to use the new way to work. What else? And we take to the other topics, not technical related. I've mentioned that before. Training is something you missed. You may miss to plan it from the right scale, but also from the main topics. And that's something you should be aware of, what's necessary to train. You have to create a concept. You have to have some ideas how to get the new technology into the company or into the customer environment. The second one here is have no plan. That's very generic because there are so many options where you have no idea what you want to do. So what's the reason for a Teams rollout? Can you answer that question? what is the way to roll this out from a technical, from the training perspective, also from the target perspective, with which target I've accomplished, the rollout was successful. That's something you should answer and you think about when you start or you begin to plan, and not just plan for how many bandwidth is necessary, which Windows 10 version is necessary, which System Center rollout package is necessary, something like that. Think also about the soft parameters, the soft topics, and your targets. And of course, with COVID-19, we have seen a dramatic increase of Teams rollouts. And many companies think, okay, if it was good within the pandemic situation with COVID-19, then it's good to bring it to other companies as well. So let's make a quick cutover. The cutover is basically you switch off the old system, whatever it is, maybe Skype for Business or whatever the previous communication or collaboration tool was, and go to Teams right away. Instead of giving some time to evaluate different stages, some ideas in a couple of minutes as well. So a quick cutover can ruin your rollout because you may have some bad service experiences. Teams is a cloud service. It's something you get from Microsoft, and you have a small amount of deployment configuration parameters you're involved directly. So when you consume a service, you should ensure you are able to support this service as well. And when you start a project and you're pretty new to the topic, you start maybe to look into the reference materials from Microsoft. That's a good idea. I always recommend that. That's for sure. And then your project plan looks like, okay, I do have the different phases. I started, and oh yeah, this small thing with champions and users, it's not so important. Let's be focused on the deployment from the technical stuff. And yeah, I love the rocket, so let's roll out pretty fast. May make it too easy from the idea behind your rollout. The first idea is, okay, let's go to Skype for Business, mode only, island mode, and then go to Teams only mode. That's perfect. And now you maybe make some time slots or time phases behind these different phases, and your target is accomplished when you see this screen on the customer on the user side. And yes, that's true, kind of, because you have missed a very, 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 very important point. This is something you can roll out within a week, I would say. If you want to stress your users, if you want to bring all these deployments pretty quick into the company, just go ahead, just flip the switch. That's pretty easy. But you can say, okay, this was just straight away. It was straightforward, perfectly done. You can do it like this, but you will fail because you haven't had a roadmap specified. And you can do it like this. It's not an actual Teams rollout roadmap. It's just something you can see as a reference. So you can see this implementation roadmap from a completely different project, but you see different phases, and you can make it pretty complex, or you can do it like, yeah, 2 arrows, just pointing out what happens when. But the point is, it's not necessary if you implement a pretty detailed roadmap or a very generic. It's important to define the results. So what's necessary to be in the situation you have Teams rolled out successfully? Do you may have different result targets for different deployment phases? How many deployment phases do you have? Where is the IT involved? Where is the user involved? What's the final target actually? And when can we shut down the old one? That's something you can track with results, and you should track as well. So I've mentioned before, Teams is and usually you consume a service and think, okay, it's done with the support because it's a cloud service. It's cloud only. And that's true, and it's wrong. It's kind of both, because Microsoft specified some very, very clear statements where the customers are responsible and where Microsoft is responsible. In this slide, and this picture is from Microsoft. It shows us where the service starts, where Microsoft is responsible for, and where the IT or the company is responsible for. And when we talk about this service management, let's stay focused here a little bit. You have to think about you consume something which comes from the internet. So you have to think about the network. Yes. You have to think about the endpoints like Windows, but not only Windows, it's also about the headsets if you join voice or you use voice as well. It's also about how to manage the service. So what happens if something goes wrong on the Microsoft side? How do you involve your support infrastructure, so your support organization, to ensure you get a real service running using your existing support organization to announce some issues from Microsoft to your users to avoid unnecessary tickets? How to handle a life cycle. And it's pretty common to talk about the creation of something. But what's about the maintenance? What about the end of life for a team, for a OneDrive? What about all the aspects you usually have when you have another user, when you have users involved, sorry. For example, it's pretty common if you have some users which are some weeks or months off for vacation. What is it? Sabbatical, for example. Because those users usually get the license removed, or in many companies they get the license removed, but with this license removed, they also lose the connectivity to the service. And the service in the back end starts some processes to get the user out of the service, deleting data, get out of the existing teams. So how do we handle that? How do we handle some organizational changes? There's a user coming to a new team. How do we handle that he gets the right information from the right team? How do we maybe manage all these provisioning processes? And of course, you have to get some insights from the environment to evaluate, is this a service which is in use on my company pretty heavily, or just a minor service and no one uses it? I don't have to care about that. So think about it. If you haven't planned for support, you should do it. Definitely do it. And I've mentioned before, one part is the technical stuff. The other one is the user part. And Teams is pretty heavy relating on both. So do you know who's actually in your company? And this question comes up when you have customers or you work in a company which is not 100% IT related, or a company who's not 100% marketing related. So who's not, which is not working 100%, 95% of all users work 100% on a PC in front of a monitor. Of course, you have a structure in your company. The C-level is pretty common for different, or basically for all companies. IT department, usually you have at least a single guy who's responsible for Teams or for all IT. I know some IT departments with a single person responsible for so many different infrastructure topics that you usually have in other companies 4 or 10 people working for that. Pretty common sales and marketing. So those are pretty common, and they are in almost every organization. And they use the regular the PC, notebook, video client, however you call it, pretty heavy. There are mobile workers, home office workers, and maybe office workers. But when we talk about Teams, it's not only for this group of people. It's also for someone who is involved in a production environment. For example, someone who's working maybe 70 or 60% on a PC because he is the head of a production line responsible for different people like foreman or general worker. So there are some other people who are not sitting in the office the whole day. They are responsible for maybe the thing the company earns some money. So you have to think about these people as well. And that's tricky because when you talk about the left part from the user side, you have a pretty clear picture. You see so many different recommendations, best practices, and it's pretty straightforward. You get some templates basically for the different departments from Microsoft directly. But if you lose the right part of your company, you get a really, really important communication path to the structure in your company who earns the money, basically. So think about them. Mentioned before, best practices. Best practices are good. That's it. Best practices are good, but they are just theory. And theory is good when you can challenge them to the real world and you get feedback. It's really important to get your feedback on a very early stage during some different rollout procedures, different rollout steps. You get the feedback when you ask for. It's also important to get the feedback from the users directly when you haven't asked. And please, if not already existing, create a feedback culture. Go to the people who are maybe the ones who are the silent ones, who are just sitting in a presentation. Hey, that's Microsoft Teams. We will roll out, and they sit there and say, because those people are the ones who may have the most important opinion. They have made the most important experience in the company, but they are, yeah, how can I say that? They are not the ones who got involved in so many decisions. They had maybe some concerns about previous deployments, and they got some rude words from the bosses. So that's something you have to keep an eye on and create some feedback culture, if not already established. The best practices shows us create champions, and I think you have at least one session during the Teams Fest which is concentrating on champions for good reason, because champions are not people who are just the early adapters. Not only they are not only the people interested in new technology, but also in there are some references to other departments in your organization. So when you start with a rollout from whatever product you think about, usually if it's IT driven, you start with IT. That's wrong with Teams. Teams is also for IT, but it's important to think about HR, marketing, engineering, project management. All the different departments have different requirements, different needs, and you can complete these needs. You can fulfill these needs with Teams, but you have to talk to them and get the feedback. Once again, best practices. Yes, stick to the best practices because they give you an idea, and maybe they are the solution for an issue on your side you're currently working on. But please transfer it to best practices, the best practices to real world scenarios. So if someone is telling you HR is in the best practices, has to be addressed like the very first department or the very last, you have to check if this matches for your company as well. So match it and recreate it for the real world. The next one is you haven't planned any trainings. And training is very, 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 very important for Microsoft Teams. Yes, it's a small tool. Yes, it's pretty straightforward when you start with some experienced users. But training is not about open and direct chat. It's about the advanced features, how to add an app like OneNote, a forms request, maybe with really experienced users, how to add something like a Power BI, Power Platform, bot, or another Microsoft 365 service, which is available in Teams, but maybe not visible in the first stage. And when we talk about training, you can phase a project when you start single training for all users. So it's okay to think about, we can start with a specific training for all users, but then you have to think about, maybe we have to split up for the product for the production line, for the users in a production. That's a good starting point. But rethink. Does it make sense to have a online training for your C-level which is maybe working with Skype for Business, Teams, something different in a IT once in a month directly. Think about maybe one-on-one trainings to ensure the C-level is able to work right away and involve the assistances for those people. You can offer or add the VIP support during the training, because the VIP support has to know what the current information level of the CXO is. So when you start training, you have to involve the VIP support if there's any, and you have to ensure they already know and can answer the questions coming from the CXO. My recommendation is to use the IT department as a first pilot. That's not necessarily the only way you can work with. Once again, challenge the best practices. Anyhow, the IT departments are usually very, very often involved into these pre-pilots, test phases, and you get some IT issue feedback. Something like, I got a blue screen, app is not starting, they have some issues which are basically related to some technical issues. So you can create some, you get your experience, can fix the technical issues. You can also create the first training materials, because you get definitely some user-based questions from a general user, and then you also get some very specific questions which you can use for other departments. And then it depends on your company. I took the sales organization or the sales department afterwards. You can use any other one, which gives you a more user-related, not IT-related experience. You can roll out this, you can establish a feedback culture, direct trainings. You get the first idea about a general rollout outside of the IT. And that's important. The most IT departments allow the person working in IT to have more permissions to change configured, installed products or services on the devices which are not rolled out in the general departments, and vice versa. In some departments, you will find some so unique and specific software you will never find on a IT PC, on a device in the IT. And then you get a idea behind that. You combine all the experiences and start with a general marketing or rollout, for example, for marketing. For the production lead, in this case, you have also a kind of three-step rollout best practices. So my opinion is to stick to the idea who is working with IT the most, and that defines the level of detail for the trainings for the different workers. Also, how do they work? Someone who is in a manufacturing area, working with metal the whole day, producing some whatever, they basically don't attend any meetings about how to order the materials they need for the production, right? So they may have just some basic trainings configured for this specific user group. Also with all the different levels in the production between. So really take a look into the personas for people working in your company. How to lead a Teams rollout to success? As I mentioned before, you have to take a look into the best practices as a blueprint, not as the only way you have to do it. Create your own rollout, create your plan, create your personas, create your idea how to involve the different people. If you talk about a global environment, a global company, how to involve different time zones. You get definitely different different work experiences when you have the headquarter in Germany, but someone in Australia has to use the same service. So there are some different requirements. Think about them. You may also have some different IT existing situations. For example, the installed software on a PC in Australia is slightly different as the German ones. You have to consider this for your rollout as well. And involve different departments. It's not just rolling out a kind of device or an update like Windows 10 got a new update. You're changing something really significant for your users, and you can change it to the better way to work or to the worst way they can ever have. You can earn some low-hanging fruits basically when you just add some new ideas how to handle existing processes, rethink existing processes, and build some solutions in Teams. Show them how to create more with Teams, and that's something you just can do with involving the different departments. And of course, use existing resources. Don't re-engineer everything or over-engineer everything. Take a look into adoption.microsoft.com for the adoption part. Take a look into it. It's a brilliant website which gives you a great starting point for your organization, how to roll out Teams or other services. It's not just about Teams. Head over to this website and take a look into it. That's something I really, really highly recommend. And last but not least, I don't want to read all these different points. This is from the adoption framework from this website, adoption.microsoft.com. So it gives you an idea. Everything I said before, assemble your team, bring all the experts together with some people from different departments, strategy and scenarios, create them, get your rollout really, really your rollout, not the best practices rollout someone other companies already had. Assess the readiness. Maybe you have the right plan, but the company is not ready right now because there are some technical issues. It's pretty straightforward, but maybe you want to start. You don't have any technical blockers, but you may have an upcoming huge event, and when you start with the Microsoft Teams rollout, you may destroy this customer-focused public event experience. So also think about the other aspects for your rollout, and then create a plan, onboard your employees. Here you are, ready for a successful rollout. That's it from my side. I just want to make you aware of the other tracks if you haven't seen it before. I guess you have. Let's connect on the different platforms.